Good evening. I'm Officer Greenenwald from Riverside. Let me first start out with talking about why this presentation came about. It was my idea, actually. I work pretty much straight midnights, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Don't really deal with the kids that much. Recently, I got moved to afternoons for a little bit, and we'd bust kids with weed. We'd bust kids with prescription drugs, and when the parents came in and we talked to them, they'd say we had no idea. We had no idea that our son or our daughter was using drugs. And as somebody who does a lot of DUI and is trained in recognizing people on drugs, it kind of boggled my mind. These signs are there. Parents should know them. So I talked to the chief and I said, can I put something together? Can we have a presentation? Can I talk to the parents? Can I explain, here's something that you should be looking for? He said, run with it. I talked to the Safe Environment Commission and I said, this is something that I think would be good for the community. It'd be good for parents to know. These are signs that you need to be aware of. And then finally, what to do if you see these signs. What are your next steps? So again, I'm Officer Greenenwald. I've been in Riverside 7 years. I got my bachelor's from ISU. I got my master's from Lewis. My master's was actually, my thesis was on DUI. It's something that I have a strong emphasis on. Again, I work the midnight shift. Pretty much, you'll never see me. I work 11 at night to 7 in the morning, 6 days a week. So chances are you don't see me. I'm certified to do field sobriety tests, to be an instructor, as well as a drug recognition expert. I want to talk a little bit about the DRE program. There's very few DREs in Illinois. There's only 51 of us. It is a nationwide program. Basically, our job is if one of our officers stops someone that says, hey, this guy, he's impaired, I don't know, it's not alcohol, I don't smell anything, what is he impaired by? It's our job to come in and we'll do an evaluation to figure out what they're impaired by. There's 7 different drug categories that we're going to go over in a minute, and we do a 12-step process to figure out what category of drug this person's impaired by. We don't call a specific drug. I don't say, you know what, Officer Panic, this guy's on Xanax. No. Officer Panic, this guy's on a central nervous system depressant. This guy's not on cocaine, he's on a stimulant. So we go through a 12-step process. We do a breath test to make sure it's not alcohol. We interview whoever stopped them. Hey, what'd you see? What'd you smell? What'd you hear? That led you to believe that they were impaired. We check their pupil size. We take their blood pressure. We check their pulse. We take their body temperature. And we check their eyes and 3 different types of light. All drugs will give you a physiological reaction. That's why people use drugs. They want to get high. So by doing this evaluation, we kind of put the pieces together into these 7 different categories. Again, it's a long course. It's a 2-week course. I was taught by instructors from South Dakota, Indiana, New Mexico, and Illinois. After that, you go out through and do 12 certifications with the instructor there. I went to Noblesville, Indiana. There's a music venue there, and we just found people that were high. Grabbed them and said, we're doing this to learn. We want to do an evaluation. We want to see what you're under the influence of. And usually they were high enough that they said yes. So they got chips and water out of it, so it worked out pretty well for them. But we went and we did these evaluations. We got our certification, and now that's something that I'm able to do for the police department. Other departments have called me and said, hey, can you come take a look at this guy? And it works out really well. As I talked about before, there's 7 different categories of abused drugs. We have depressants, stimulants, hallucinogens, disassociative anesthetics, narcotics, inhalants, and cannabis. The big thing, and I'm going to hit on this a lot of times tonight, the big thing with kids right now is prescription drugs. Kids don't abuse cocaine like maybe they did 30 years ago. It's prescription drugs. It's easier to get. They can get it from their friends who have these prescriptions. And it's a lucrative business for some of these kids that sell their prescriptions. Mom and dad think they're taking it. They're actually selling it to their friends, and their friends are abusing it. We're going to go through each category. each category of drugs, and we're going to talk about the main drugs that we see in each category. I've highlighted in red on each slide the drugs that we've seen for sure in Riverside recently, okay? Not to say that the other drugs aren't there, but these are the drugs that I can say in the last 6 months we've arrested people for this. We know that people are dealing this. So that's why they're highlighted in red. First off, central nervous system depressants. Everybody's favorite, alcohol. Alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. All of these drugs are going to give you the same indicators of somebody under the influence of alcohol, minus that alcohol smell. The biggest drug, prescription-wise, that I've seen in Riverside over the last probably 5 years is Xanax. Kids don't call it Xanax, they call it bars. Bars is the number one thing. If you hear your son or daughter talking about someone about getting bars or using bars, they're talking about Xanax. B-A-R-S, yep, bars. And that's because they're a little yellow pill that's shaped like a bar. Kids will either take them orally just like they're meant for, or on 2 occasions I've seen kids snorting them. They crush them up and they'll snort them. It's a quicker high. I can't imagine it's too pleasant, but that's the other way. So Xanax, like I said, is number one as far as prescription drugs go. It is number one right now in this area. As far as what we're looking for when we're looking for somebody under the influence of depressant, again, it's the same stuff that we look for when we see somebody under the influence of alcohol. They're going to have that slurred and mumbled speech. They're going to have those slow movements. They're going to have trouble walking or standing. Everything's going to be down. Blood pressure's down. Heart rate is down. They're going to look drunk, except you're not going to smell alcohol. I just want to point out, because we are talking about prescription drugs, when I'm dealing with this, we're talking about people that are abusing them. If you take Xanax for a medicinal therapeutic purpose, you're not getting high off it. We're talking about people that abuse it. They're taking multiple pills. They're not supposed to be prescribed it at all. We're not talking about your legal prescription drug users. We're talking about people that are abusing these drugs. After depressants, we're going to talk about stimulants, okay? Again, cocaine, methamphetamine, we see it not usually with kids, okay? We're seeing that with people on traffic stops, adults. Kids, they're abusing prescriptions again. Adderall is the biggest stimulant. Your son or daughter may take Adderall. Again, rather than take it themselves, they could be selling it. They could be abusing it themselves. Pretty much, stimulants and depressants are going to be your opposites. Anytime that you see stimulants, everything's going to be elevated. Here's some examples of Adderall and Ritalin, okay? They're your uppers. Speed, they call them blue footballs. That's a term that we've picked up on recently. Or wake-ups. College kids are using stimulants to stay up to study. They're using it as an excuse for caffeine, and they're abusing it. So, stimulants are, like I said, just the opposite of depressants. Everything's going to be different. Biggest thing with stimulants, any drug, we call the eyes the gateway to the soul. Any drug is going to affect your eyes. That's pretty much the biggest thing that we pay attention to as DREs, is we pay attention to the eyes. With stimulants, their pupils are going to be blown out. Big pupils, if you're in a bright room, they're still going to have that big, dark pupil. So, like I said, that's going to be the biggest thing that you look for. They're going to be hyper, always moving. Either hands are always going to be moving. They can't stand still. Their balance could be poor because they're so rigid. Everything on their body gets very tight. Dry mouth and bruxism. Okay, if bruxism is the grinding of the teeth, if you're concerned that your son or daughter is abusing their Ritalin, their Adderall, watch their mouth. Okay, if they can't keep their mouth from moving, or they're always grinding their teeth, it's something to pay attention to. That's bruxism. Okay, that's not normal. That's something that is pretty much indicative of a stimulant or hallucinogen. Again, they're going to be very rigid. They're going to be restless. So it's something to pay attention to. We see Ritalin and Adderall abused, but nowhere near as much as Xanax. Xanax is by far the #1 prescription drug in this area. Hallucinogens. It's exactly what it sounds like, okay? These are the drugs that make people see things, smell things, okay? One thing with hallucinogens is the senses get confused. So you could, if you're talking to someone, you think maybe your son's impaired by something, they're gonna, Mom, that smells really green. I can really smell that green. Okay, that's not a normal response. You don't smell a color, okay? Again, that's one of those things with hallucinogens. A hallucinogen messes with your senses. If they're just seeing something that's not there, you need to be concerned that they've been using a hallucinogen. Biggest hallucinogens, #1, psilocybin, okay? We just did a search warrant in Lyons, and we got a lot of mushrooms out of there. We had a Riverside student that was high on mushrooms on the west end. It's around. Again, it's not as big as it used to be, but it is around. It is still a problem. It is still used by high school kids. Ecstasy, again, ecstasy sort of hit its peak in the late 90s, early 2000s, and now it's kind of on its way back down. The problem with a lot of these drugs, especially hallucinogens, is that the people that make them are very smart. They're synthetic drugs. It's nothing that grows in the ground. It's all chemicals. And when we make something like ecstasy illegal, all of a sudden that chemical makeup changes just a little bit, and it's not illegal anymore until the laws catch up and they find out that they're abusing this. We have MDMA, that's ecstasy. We also have MDA. They took out one part of the drug. When the lab tests for it, they say, nope, it's not ecstasy. It's not controlled. It's not a controlled substance. So the law has to catch up, and they have to make that drug illegal now, and it's always this catch-up game. Molly, okay? Again, I think we've seen Molly once or twice in the 7 years I've been here. It's basically a purified version of ecstasy. It'll give you that same hallucinogenic high, the same symptoms as somebody under the influence of ecstasy. LSD, I know Lyons Township recently had a case with LSD. Again, not as common, but again, what's old is new and what's new is old. So it is around, and it is something to be aware of. I wouldn't say as much as prescription drugs, but it is something that as parents need to be aware of. LSD comes just in strips that they can lick. It's taken basically off your tongue. So like I said, the biggest one that we've seen out of that is the psilocybin mushrooms. It is a mushroom. If you saw it, you'd say, why does my kid have mushrooms in a torn off plastic baggie? Okay, that's psilocybin. All hallucinogens, they're gonna say that they're rolling, okay? That's the term when you're high on a hallucinogen. That's really big with ecstasy. Like at raves, they're always gonna say that they're rolling. Again, they're called shrooms, mushrooms, magic mushrooms. Again, it's out there. We've had it 2-3 times in the last 3 or 4 years locally, and it is out there. Hallucinogens and stimulants are very similar. You're gonna have the same characteristics. The big thing is that with a hallucinogen, people are gonna be seeing things, they're gonna be smelling things that just isn't there. That's how we pretty much differentiate hallucinogens and stimulants. And also we ask them, hey, what are you seeing right now? Well, the wall is swirling. Okay, well that's something that we need to pay attention to. And we had that with at one of our field evaluations in Indiana. We asked the guy, what are you seeing right now? And he said, it looks like the world is spinning into a hole. Okay, what'd you use? Pretty much everything but a lot of LSD. Okay, now we know what you're on. So again, it's out there. If your student, if your son or daughter talks about seeing something that's not there, smelling something that's not there, or that confusion of the senses, you should be thinking, okay, first off, they're gonna need medical attention. And second off, what have they been using? What kind of hallucinogen have they been using? Again, same thing with stimulants. You're gonna have that dry mouth, that bruxism. Pupils are dilated. Very uncoordinated movements. They're very jerky. The person that we had in Indiana, we asked him to stand up straight, and he looked like he was trying to do the limbo. He was, I mean, I don't know, we were pretty much holding him up. So very uncoordinated movements, not sure how to control their body. Dissociative anesthetics, okay? Disassociate and anesthetic. To disassociate is to take away, and anesthetics to kill pain. PCPs used to be huge. PCP is how the DRE program actually got started. 2 Los Angeles police officers were stopping people that they knew were impaired. They were driving on the sidewalk. They were driving all over the place. They take them for a breath test, and they have no alcohol. Well, these 2 officers decided, you know what? Obviously, it's drugs. We need to come up with a way to prosecute these offenders. They came up with the DRE program, and it's been molded ever since. PCP was the reason, okay? PCP, ketamine, is an animal tranquilizer. Again, people break into veterinary clinics to get the ketamine because they can get high off of it. And then dextromethorphan. Anybody know what dextromethorphan is? Cough syrup, okay? It's the active ingredient in cough syrup, Robitussin. The problem, kids will abuse it because it gives them a high. The problem is that cough syrup has other stuff in it. It's got acetaminophen, which if you take too much acetaminophen, your liver's shot, so that could kill you pretty quick. But they want that high off of the DXM, off the dextromethorphan. What kids are doing with the dextromethorphan is that they're mixing it with a soft drink. Syrup is one name that it's called, or it's called lean or purple drink, okay? They're taking Robitussin, putting it in Sprite, mixing it around and drinking it. They're getting that high off of the cough syrup. Parents may not recognize, they just think they're drinking out of a Slurpee, something they got off of 7-Eleven. Teachers may not realize that what they're actually drinking is a drug. And it's an easy way to hide that they're actually getting high off a legal substance that they're abusing. So again, with PCP, dextromethorphan, ketamine, pretty much out of control behavior, okay? They're gonna be sweating, they're gonna be violent or combative, especially with PCP. I know probably about 3 years ago, we had a subject up on Repton on the north end, higher than a kite on PCP, running around in the middle of winter, completely naked, okay? Just, again, extremely high body temperature. He wasn't feeling the cold. All of us were cold. He wasn't cold at all. The high blood pressure, the high pulse rate, all that stuff, it makes them very hard for us. Anytime we deal with someone on PCP, there's multiple officers there because if it turns into a fight, again, it's a dissociative anesthetic. They don't feel the pain whatsoever. They're gonna have trouble with their words and they're gonna be confused. They're gonna have no idea where they are, what they were doing. They're gonna be your personified high person. They're gonna be very, they're just very out of it, very, very confused. Illinois, Chicago in particular, I-290, it's known as the heroin highway, okay? Heroin is a problem around here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and it can hit anybody. I could tell you off the top of my head, the last 3 local heroin addicts I dealt with were the son of a judge, the son of a lawyer, and the son of a doctor, okay? It's not just a problem on the west side of Chicago. The problem is that it's so easy to get on the west side of Chicago that our kids are going there, buying their heroin, and they're abusing it. Again, that's just off the top of my head. I can tell you that I know of at least 4 heroin addicts that live in Riverside, okay? It's a problem here. It's always gonna be a problem here because we're so close to the city. It's really easy to get there. It's really easy to get these drugs. Other narcotics, okay? Heroin is a narcotic, similar to prescription narcotics, but obviously a lot stronger. You have Oxycontin, codeine, methadone, and Vicodin, okay? Vicodin used to be real big. Oxy used to be real big for teens, taking the painkillers as a way to get high. That's slowly being replaced by Xanax and your depressants. Xanax, Ativan, stuff like that. So Again, narcotics, they're a problem, especially heroin. I would say that heroin's the biggest problem that we face combined with the prescription drugs. Common terms when you're talking about heroin. H, a blow, a jab, and heroin users will call their needle the kit. The way that they're using this, they'll get something metallic, they'll get the powder heroin, they'll put it on the metal, they'll light up the bottom. Usually they use the bottom of a Coke can. They'll light it up, use a syringe to pull that out, and then they'll inject it, okay? Again, it is a problem. You have the issues of dirty needles. You have the issues of overdose. Cook County is not a Narcan area yet. Lake County and DuPage County have kind of jumped on board because they're having such a problem that police officers are carrying Narcan, which will cancel the effects of heroin. The problem with that is these people are going through a very intense high, and the minute you hit them with the Narcan, they're extremely angry that you just canceled that high that they paid $10 or $20 for, and the fight's on. So our all ambulances are equipped with Narcan to cancel the effects of a narcotic overdose. Police, like I said, police officers are not yet. It might happen soon, I don't know. It just comes in like an EpiPen form that we inject. But again, heroin, obviously a big problem. How to recognize somebody under the influence of heroin and or a narcotic. Remember how we talked about a stimulant? Those people are going to be blown out. The exact opposite for a heroin user or somebody under the influence of narcotic. Those pupils are going to be shrunk. They're going to be pinpoint. You're going to have a hard time picking out their pupils. All you're going to see is the color of the eye. On the nod, okay? If you're talking to, if you're concerned that your son or daughter is abusing heroin, and you're talking to them, and it looks like they're always falling asleep on you, but then when you talk to them, they just brighten right back up, you call that on the nod, okay? It looks like they're falling asleep, they're not. That's the drug, basically sedating them until you regain their attention again, and then they're going to wake up. Droopy eyelids, again, similar to depressants, it's going to be hard to keep their eyes open. It's that whole, everything's going to be down, down, down with a narcotic. Track marks, fresh puncture marks. Good example on the picture, okay? Somebody with those fresh marks, sometimes they're actually oozing. There could be scars there. Definitely an indicator of a heroin user. Somebody that's been abusing heroin that is injecting it. Heroin can also be snorted, not nearly as common. It's much more common to be shot. Slow, low, and raspy speech. Their voice is going to be lowered. Heroin dries everything out, so it's going to be that raspy, low voice. Inhalants. When I went through the DRE program last year, I couldn't believe all the stuff that people inhale into their systems. Dust off is by far number one. Again, something we've seen around here. I'm sure you guys all remember the story of the woman up on the north side of Chicago who killed the 5-year-old child. Driving, she was inhaling dust off, drove off the road and hit him on the sidewalk, okay? Again, she's taking computer cleaner, inhaling it to get that really intense high. You can also inhale paint, glue. One thing that we've seen with the DRE program is Axe body spray. Kids are using that to get high. They're inhaling that. Nitrous oxide, for any of you that are in the medical field or dental field, we have kids that will inhale nitrous oxide and use that to get high, just like you need for a medical procedure. One thing, if you're worried about an inhalant, is looking for all those cans. The person that used to live in Riverside, she doesn't live here anymore, thankfully, because she used to hit everything, we'd go and when we'd stop her, there would be multiple cans of computer cleaner in her passenger seat. She'd buy 10 at a time, and that was the drug that she would abuse. check the garbage. If that's something that you're worried about, check the garbage. Is there a ton of those cans there? They're going to have that chemical odor on their mouth and on their breath. Just something to be aware of. Obviously, we know what this guy's been abusing, okay? Paint, all right? He was probably pouring into a paper bag and inhaling it, and all that gets on your face. Believe it or not, they prefer a certain color. They like gold and silver. I don't know why, but paint huffers love gold and silver. You're going to have that slurred speech. Inhaling a substance, you're going to have nausea. The huge odor of that substance. That's how the woman that used to live in town, that's how we knew that when she was high. When we'd stop her, say she hit a parked car, we try to run her through fields, she's clearly impaired, we'd give her a breath test, she comes up zeros. Okay, well, she smells like something, and then we look in the car, we'd find the dust off, and that's when we're realizing, okay, this is an inhalant, this is what we should be looking for. Again, they're going to have that same lack of muscle control, very intense headaches. They're basically poisoning their brain. There's a good video out there of 2 paint huffers in, I believe, Arizona or New Mexico. They can't even stand up. They are so out of it from they're brain damaged by the time that they're done with it. It's their addiction, but they don't even know how much it's killing them. And then they're going to have the residue of that substance near their mouth and their nose, just like this poor guy does. Obviously, cannabis is huge. We're now, as of yesterday, a medical marijuana state. I guess Governor Rauner said that he's going to start issuing license for medical marijuana. There's a lot of terms that go along with cannabis. Obviously, marijuana, kids might not refer to it as marijuana, but marijuana, weed, grass. I didn't know about chiefing. I asked one of my explorers about that. They're like, yeah, you've never heard that? I'm like, okay, we'll write that one down, something to add. Blazing, kush, hydro, dro, and then by weight, eighth, ounce, dime bag, nickel sack. All these terms that kids still use to describe weed that they are wanting to get. Common tools of the trade, bowls. I have a bunch of examples of bowls up here. Blunts and bongs. A blunt is basically just a cigar. They'll go have a friend that's 18 go to Minuteman, get a single cigar, dump out all the tobacco, fill it with cannabis, and now they smoke that. And again, bowls and bongs are another way to smoke weed. They'll also call anything that they can smoke their piece. Hey, can I get my piece? I got a piece in the car. Again, just terminology to remember. So how do we know when somebody's high on weed? Reddened eyes, okay? I'm not talking bloodshot. I'm talking where the whites of their eyes just look red. A lot of times they're going to have clear eyes, okay? Because they know that that's something that police and that parents will look for, okay? Why are your eyes all bloodshot? Well, clear eyes takes that away. Green tongue, okay? Obviously, weed's a plant. Plants have chlorophyll. That, when they smoke it, will actually get on their tongue. Anytime I think I have somebody driving under the influence of cannabis, as I'm doing the test, hey, can you do a favor, stick out your tongue real quick? And I'll look for that green coating on their tongue. Hey, how long ago did you finish smoking? My favorite answer was a couple nights ago, about 5 minutes ago. Great. Thanks for that. I needed that. Increased appetite. Obviously, that odor of burnt or fresh cannabis. I brought some cannabis here. You can smell it if you want. Know what odor you're looking for, okay? They're having impaired perception of time and distance, okay? They're not going to know when, for example, when we do field sobriety tests on somebody for cannabis, we do the same as we do for alcohol, but I'm looking for different things, okay? They're going to have a difficulty doing heel to toe because they have that impaired perception. They're going to have a difficulty remembering what I told them to do 2 minutes ago because they have that impaired time frame. So this is kind of the stuff to look for with weed. Again, I have a bunch of stuff when we're done. Feel free to come up, look at the stuff that I have. Know that if you see this is something you need to address with your teenager. Those are the 7 categories, okay? There are so many drugs that fit into those 7 categories. So that's just a rundown of what we look for, the general indicators. Again, an actual evaluation, if I stop somebody and I think they're under the influence of drugs, it takes a good 45 minutes to go through the whole evaluation. The breath test, checking their eyes, checking their pulse, checking their blood pressure, checking their temperature. So that's just the general indicators that you as parents can pay attention to. You go home tonight, tomorrow, whatever, and you see something that you're like, wait a minute, he just said that I should be looking for something like this. What do you do, okay? Obviously, hammer it home. You gotta tell your kids there's no tolerance. Riverside's really good, about kids with alcohol and drugs. There are very few breaks. Pretty much if we stop anybody with drugs or alcohol, parents are gonna be notified for sure, and they're gonna be either cited or arrested, depending on the amount. Something's gonna happen as an enforcement action. Obviously, that all starts with you, starting with making sure that they know this is not allowed. I've been in some houses of kids in town where I'm talking to, I come in and I tell them, I stopped your son with weed. And they ask, is that true? And he goes, yeah, I'm selling it. Okay, well, this problem starts not with me. It starts, you have to hammer home that obviously this is unacceptable. Okay? We get into all this stuff that with good parenting, just asking. Always ask. If you think that there's a problem, if you think that your kid's abusing drugs, who are they going out with, okay? Know where they're going, what time they're gonna be home. All this stuff that you guys know as parents that helps you know what your kids are up to. And then I said, check, okay? You let them borrow the car. The next morning before you go out, look around it, okay? Are there wrappers for tobacco products? Is there loose tobacco there where they dump that out and they filled it with cannabis? Their clothes, do their clothes smell like weed? Kids aren't gonna jump straight from, I'm a good kid, straight A kid, to a heroin user, okay? There's gonna be some steps in between, whether it's alcohol, cannabis, something like that. So it's important to catch those gateways before they get to a harder drug. School is huge, okay? I don't know if everybody in here has kids that go to RB or are going to go to RB. Dean Sibley is awesome. Dean DeGetti is awesome. They'll work with you, okay? If you say, hey, you know what? I'm worried about my son or daughter. I think there may be an issue here. They'll help you and they'll come up with a plan that kind of you guys can communicate. Here's what I'm seeing at school. Here's their grades. They've been getting in trouble more and more recently. This isn't like them. That should be a red flag. You know what? There might be a problem here. Okay. Again, if you suspect drug or alcohol use, okay? I understand, that you want to maintain that good relationship with your kid, okay? Totally get that. I'm a dad myself. Granted, he's only 10 months old. But someday I'm going to want that good relationship with him. But if there's a problem and it needs to be addressed, there's steps that you can take to address it, okay? Check their room. Obviously, if you went into your son or daughter's room and you saw the marijuana leaf painted on the wall, that should be a big red flag to you, okay? Check their phone. Obviously, they got to be getting the drugs from somewhere. Chances are they're using their phone to get those drugs, okay? If you think you've got enough reason, you've had them with drugs before, there are over-the-counter urine tests. Hey, you know what? You tell me you're not smoking weed, fine. Do you want to be able to drive for the next 2 weeks? Then I want you to take a urine test. Let's have it all out right here. If they've been smoking weed, they're going to probably tell you no. And then as a parent, it's your decision what you want to do, okay? Weed will stay in your system 10 days, 2 weeks, give or take. Illinois law still says that if you have any amount of drugs in your system, that it's a DUI. So if I stop someone and I think they're impaired, I arrest them, and they come back positive for cannabis, it's a DUI. So again, it will stay in your system, but There should obviously never be any weed in your student system to begin with. There are resources, okay? I was hoping, I actually had an email last week from a person from Rosecrans. Rosecrans is an addiction center. Michael, where's it based out of? Rockford? Rockford, okay. It's based in Rockford. It's an inpatient, mainly, facility. Your son or daughter will go, and they'll stay there, and they will basically be detoxed and given the tools that they need to kick whatever habit that they have. I put their website on there. If you haven't gotten a handout, there's handouts over there. If you think that there's an issue and you want to talk to someone, they're really good about talking. I do know there's usually a wait for a bed, but at least make the contact with them, tell them what the issue is that you're having, and thank you. And they will they'll work with you, and if a bed becomes available and they think that your son or daughter needs inpatient, they'll tackle it from there. We're always here. The police department's always here. If you're having an issue with your son or daughter, you think it's drug related, call us. We can talk to them. Understand that most of the time, if you call us and, hey, my son's got a pound of weed in his room, we have a hard time of just taking that and not doing anything about it. There has to be some sort of enforcement action. I'm not saying don't call us. I'm just saying understand that there may be some enforcement involved if you do call us. Pillars Social Services, Riverside is a Pillars community. If you're having an issue where you need to talk to a counselor, Pillars is the way to go. They're very good about dealing with families. We've referred tons of people to them if need be.
What would be an example of things
That Pillars would be? Honestly, Pillars will pretty much handle anything. If you tell them, hey, I think my son or daughter is abusing drugs, they can set you up with a counselor. They'll bring in your son or daughter, talk to you and them together, hammer out an action plan on how to handle things from there. They're really good about family-related issues. I also put in there some additional resources. Partnership for Drug-Free Kids is a good resource. And as far as facts, as far as substance abuse. My information's on there. Obviously, I work 11 at night to 7 in the morning, so if you call at 10 in the morning, you'll probably never get me. So email's a way to go if you actually need to get a hold of me. Again, the idea behind this presentation wasn't to scare you about all the substances that are out there. There are a ton of substances out there, and I feel like they come up with a new one every day. But it was to give you the idea of here's stuff to look for, here's physiological signs, here's paraphernalia to look for, and basically give you the tools so that you don't need us. Ideally, parents are going to recognize it and handle it as a family before it gets to the police level and we have to start arresting kids or citing kids or anything like that. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about and you don't want to ask me in front of everybody, please feel free to email me, call me. I'll do my best to either call you at 7 in the morning when I'm about to get off or at 11 and not call you at 3 in the morning and say, hey, I'm here to answer your question. I'm sure there's questions, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll go from there. Does anybody have any questions off the bat on anything I talked about? I know I went pretty quick, yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I understand on occasion Riverside will be able to go through, clear the hallways and having drugs, prescription drugs and all that.
Yes.
Do they sense even the smaller pills, or do they?
No.
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 What do they look for?
The canines are for illicit drugs, so
What are they looking for?
when all the police canines are trained in illicit drugs, cannabis, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine. There's one more. Cannabis, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine. I forget what the fifth one is because it's something we don't get very often. But They're trained only in illicit drugs. They're not going to find pills. Basically, the way that the canine searches are designed are that we're looking for indicators as hopefully we never find drugs. But if we do find drugs, if we do find cannabis, that gives us a reason to look into that student further. The dogs are only checking lockers. If they hit on a locker that there was illegal drugs in there, the school, not us, the school brings the student down. Hey, let's see what's in that backpack. Let's see if there's anything that you shouldn't have. So again, not pills. Pills, dogs are not going to find pills any day of the week. Absolutely, and that's why they're so popular with kids. Prescription drug abuse is absolutely rampant, especially among teenagers. It's, obviously heroin's a big issue, but the prescription drug abuse is just as bad, if not worse. Sure. What other questions? Yes.
Well, this question is probably naive, but
sure.
So with the prescription drugs, then are they all getting them from family members who are using them because they're not noticing, or how do they?
It's possible. Yeah, a lot of times it's either their prescription that they're not taking, and instead they're selling, or it's a family member's prescription that the parent's not noticing that 2 pills are missing here, 2 pills are missing there, but they're not stealing them from pharmacies. They're not stealing them from. I mean, they're coming from family members or they're coming from friends. It's not a theft from a pharmacy or something like that. It's all legitimate drugs that were prescribed by a doctor and are just being taken out of the therapeutic range and given to other people. Yes. It can be. Yeah, I mean, it can be. The last person that I talked to, an RB student that was abusing Xanax, he said he was getting it for $10 a pill. It depends on, I mean, if a dime bag is usually $10. That's where a nickel sack is a smaller bag, $5. It depends on how much they're getting. But it can range anywhere from, if they're getting a lot of cannabis, I think the last one that we had was an ounce. I want to say he paid $450 for it. And the kids are coming up with the money somehow. Yeah, obviously they could be selling the drugs. And a lot of times that's what kids will tell us. This is all mine except I sell it to support my habit. That's huge. I think every kid that we stop that has a pretty decent amount of cannabis says, I'm not a drug dealer. I just sell so I can smoke for free. Sorry, but you're still a drug dealer. That's the definition is that you're dealing drugs to other people, so you're a drug dealer. But that's pretty common, is that they're saying that that's why they're selling drugs, is so that they can smoke for free. Yes, sir.
Can you speak to performance-enhancing drugs, steroids? Do you see that in RV? So what is the trend there?
I have not seen it personally at RB. Mood swings are huge for steroids. They call it roid rage, where they're perfectly fine and then something sets them off and they go off the handle. We don't deal with it much with the DRE program, so I'm not all that familiar with it, to be honest. But what I do know just from stuff I've read is that's the main side effect, is that there's going to be drastic mood swings one way and the other, and they're going to have that intense anger. If you have a student that's an athlete and that's something you're concerned about, you can always go to the school, talk to the coach, make yourself known that this is not okay with our family, this is not okay with my son, my daughter, whatever it is. Was there another question? Yes.
How accurate are those drug tests like from Walgreens?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. I do know I recently had somebody arrested for DUI drugs who the parent told me up and down, my son is not high, he's not high, he's not high. Went and took one of those drug tests, came back negative. He actually gave me urine. I sent it to the state police lab, and it came back positive for 3 different drugs. So It could be a threshold of the state police lab is checking for less in the urine than the drug test is. I'm not too sure. I wish I could give you a better answer. I don't want to give you a bad answer and say that they're 100% positive or that they're 0%, because I'm not too sure.
Yeah, but that's parents, we don't want to just combine.
Right.
And then say, oh, it's negative if we're not.
Right. And that's kind of why, I mean, if it were me and I had suspicion that my son was using drugs, it wouldn't be a one-time thing. It'd be, okay, you know what? Something's not right with you today. All right, we have a urine test here. Let's see what comes up. Okay, comes up negative. All right, well, you know what? Apparently that it's something else, something you want to talk about, or you're depressed about something. And if it comes up again, you have that option there. Like I said, I wish there was a better answer. There is other stuff out there, but it's mainly for law enforcement to check the saliva and stuff like that. But, I mean, I'm not familiar enough with them to give you a good answer on how reliable that they are. Sure. Yes? Yep. K2 spice, yep. I've stopped 2 people that had K2 on them. She asked about synthetic marijuana. It's a chemical compound. It's not actual cannabis. It gives you very similar effects to cannabis, but actually has a hallucinogenic quality. She asked whether we've seen it around here. Like I've said, in 7 years, I've seen it twice. Once was a guy just that happened to be walking down the street that had it. It's sold, it looks like a tobacco pouch. It's sold in a pouch. Like I said, we don't see it very much. Smoke shops aren't supposed to sell it in Illinois anyway. So if kids are getting it, it's not from Illinois. Or it's under the table at a smoke shop. But it's not as common as these other drugs. Does that answer your question? Sorry. Go ahead. Potpourri, yeah, yep. But, I mean, again, synthetic marijuana is a lot like the synthetic drugs we talked about, where you're going to get different chemical compounds for different stuff. And again, it's, the illicit drug makers are, believe it or not, a lot of these are just scientists that are mixing stuff up and know what they're doing. And they know that if they take one element out, it's not illegal anymore. So that's where we get all these different pills and all these different substances. Another one that, as far as ecstasy goes, it's called BZP. I recently stopped a kid who had 10 pills of BZP on him. Again, federally it's illegal. By the state level, it's not illegal. So basically when it went to court, the judge said, I know it's a drug, I know that it's like ecstasy, but I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. So actually I think that was about a year ago. I think they added it January 1st as a drug. I'd have to double check, but. And again, with ecstasy, let's see if. Okay, these pills are very similar to what you're gonna see. The pills that I had with the BZP were Bart Simpson's head. They look like Flintstone vitamins. But it was actually an illicit drug, a hallucinogen. So, these pills are very similar to what you're gonna see. They're gonna have markings, they're gonna have triangles, they're gonna have faces. Batman is another big one. The pill looks like Batman. So, basically this is a pretty accurate representation of what one of these pills is gonna look like. Yes, Marty. Meth. We, up until about 6 months ago, hadn't dealt with meth other than maybe 1 or 2 cases in the northern suburbs, like Melrose Park, Schiller Park. They had a couple of cases. There was a case maybe about 3 months ago in Brookfield where there was somebody under the influence of methamphetamine. It's much more a southern state, southern part of Illinois, where you get the clandestine labs and stuff like that. It's much more of a southern drug. The theory is that the gangs have such a hold on heroin in the city that they don't want another drug competing for that business. So anytime methamphetamine makes its appearance, they try to push it out. The gangs do, which is nice for us, but basically just makes heroin even stronger.
And when you're talking about this distribution,
Yes.
is it, what is completely coming from the gangs in Chicago, and where are the other types coming from? We know that the pills are from our households.
Right.
From each other. But what about the other types?
Again, with heroin is always, heroin is pretty much always going to be coming from the west side of the city. Anytime that we stop somebody with heroin, I got it from the west side. Cocaine, we've done search warrants where we've gotten cocaine out of houses in Berwyn, Lyons. It's there, it's being dealt out of there. I probably misspoke in saying that heroin was only in the city. We did a search warrant a couple years ago on Ogden Avenue in Riverside, and he had 500 grams of heroin, which is a huge amount. He was basically just renting the apartment in Riverside to make heroin. Cannabis, it could be coming from anywhere. Again, and when we stop people, the city is people's go-to for drugs. They go to the city to buy their drugs. Whether it's weed, heroin, the only thing that you're gonna get real local is pills. That's not to say that they don't go buy a bulk amount of cannabis, buy an ounce or two at a time, come back, divvy it up, and sell it here. But they're getting the bulk of their weed elsewhere, either in the city, Berwyn, Lyons, Cicero. That's where they're getting their bigger amounts of drugs. Yes.
How soon after use do you see some of the visual signs?
That
Like if someone's like head urges, what time or is it?
It's the question she asked was, how soon after somebody takes one of these drugs are we going to see these physiological symptoms? And it's pretty quick. With a heroin user, as soon as they push that needle, their pupils are going to constrict. Somebody uses cocaine, as soon as they snort that cocaine, their pupils are going to dilate. So every drug is different. There's different onsets and durations for every drug. But for the most part, with pills, again, it's going to take a little bit longer than it would if you're smoking something, snorting something, or injecting something. So with a pill, again, it might take 15, 20 minutes for that pill to kick in, or those pills to kick in. But with those other drugs, it's going to be pretty immediate. What other questions do we have? No other questions? Okay. Yes, Lonnie? Sure.
How common is it, aside from the high school, like junior high?
We do deal with cannabis at the junior high level. Not as much as at the high school level, obviously, but we have stopped kids. The schools called us and said, so-and-so has cannabis. And again, Riverside is great with the schools. Miss Weston at Hauser and the deans at RB, if they have somebody with drugs, they call us right away, and there's going to be some sort of enforcement action taken. If we think that they're dealing out of the high school, then there's going to be an arrest. If we think it's something that we can cite them for and have the parents handle, they'll get a ticket. They'll have to go to Maywood usually. And a lot of times with people under 18, the judge will give them 20, 25 hours community service in lieu of a fine, since, let's face it, who's going to pay the fine? And it's most likely going to be you guys. So it does happen at the junior high level, but definitely the high school level is where we're going to see it a lot more. Any other questions for me? Again, plenty of paraphernalia up here, some cannabis. Come on up, look, see what kind of tools of the trade we're dealing with. And I'm up here, like I said, if you have a question you want to ask me that you don't want to ask in front of everybody, I'm up here. Otherwise, thanks again for coming. I hope it was informative and that it kind of opened up everybody's eyes a little bit. And again, I'll be up here. So thank you.